Hey, in today's video, I want to talk about the difference between B2B and B2C products or companies, how they operate when it comes to developing their own products. Just very quickly, let's do a very quick recap. B2B products or companies are focusing in building businesses for another businesses. So they're trying to sell their products to other businesses. So think, for example, a company like Salesforce that is creating a CRM tool that is used internally in other companies. In the case of B2C products, you are actually selling directly to consumers. You're not selling to another business, you're selling to consumer, to somebody like me, you. And an example for this could be an app that you can download for your mobile phone. Now, what I'm going to do today is create a table where I talk about different topics and what are the different approaches from those companies and how they could potentially learn from each other and maybe take best practices from each other because they work quite differently. Let's get into it. So the first topic that we have here is how do they focus on the problem? How they define the problem and how they address it? What problems they are addressing with the solution. So in the case of B2B products, the type of problems that they address are usually quite different from the ones that B2C products address. Because in the case of a B2B product, think again about Salesforce, what they are doing is that they are solving business efficiency or operational needs. So think about Salesforce, what it's trying to do is trying to help you to manage all the sales relationships that you have with your customers and other relationships, by the way. It's not just about the sales is a customer relations management tool. So it covers many different aspects of how you are engaging with your customers, in which stage you are, and so on. So when you think about a tool or a product that is developing or solving problems for B2B cases, usually you want to focus on making the company or the business that you are targeting more efficient or enabling them to do something that they potentially couldn't do without your product. And here, this is one of the big differences with B2C products. Think about, for example, again, the app that you can download into your mobile phone. It could be something like an exercise app or, I don't know, calorie tracking app, whatever it is that you are into, it doesn't matter. Usually, you are not solving necessarily a problem or something that is blocking people. In some cases, you might be, but it is more rare the case. And usually these products, what they are doing is that they are solving individual or lifestyle problems that those potential consumers can have. This means that when you think about a B2B product, you're looking more to solve real needs and problems. And when it comes to the B2C products, in many cases, again with an asterisk, you are focusing more on helping people do something, but usually you are not solving something that is like a roadblock for the users. Usually. In some cases you might, by the way, as a B2C, but that's not the most common type of products that you see in B2C. Let's go to the next topic. So now we are talking about who's the decision maker. This is important because who purchases the product is going to be a very different person in a B2C product from a B2B product. Let's go first to the B2B, sorry. The B2B product, the buyer is not often the end user. So when you sell a product to a company, so for example, you want to adopt Miro or you want to adopt Salesforce in your company. It depends on the size of your company. There's going to be different people involved. Miro, for example, it might be somebody like a product leader that makes the decision. But a product leader, like a product director that I have been, not always is going to be the most active user of Miro. They might be a user, by the way. That doesn't mean that they're not a user, but they might not be the most active users. The most active users many times are going to be designers, are going to be engineers, product managers, different people in the organization. In very large organizations, you are going to have somebody like a CIO or even a CFO who is going to be the one that is deciding if you are going to purchase, for example, Miro, or if you are going to be able to purchase something like Salesforce. And a good example is something like Slack versus Teams. A CIO is not going to look so much into which one is the best tool for the job. Sometimes they are going to look more into, hey, I don't want to manage way too many tools. I want to manage least number of vendors possible. And they might end up going for a tool that is more a generalist and that it offers like a portfolio of solutions like Microsoft Office does, versus going for Slack, which would mean that they had to manage yet another vendor, even if the tool might be better. And it depends on who you talk to. You might love Slack, or you might not love Slack, and you might actually like Teams. So there is people for both camps. I can tell you that. So what means here is that when you're talking to these people or to these B2B companies, you had to talk to different people. You had to make sure that your message is both for the end user, but also for the decision maker, because the decision maker might not be the user. And they also had to understand why they should pick your tool instead of the competitor's tool. When it comes to B2C, the buyer is usually the end user. So if I go and purchase an app for exercising, or I subscribe to an app for exercising, or Netflix, for example, that's me making that decision. So then I am the decision maker and I'm the user. So the marketing is much easier. There is maybe one case that comes to my mind where in B2C products, the decision maker is not the same person as the end user. And that is for products that are built for kids. In those cases, usually the kids don't make the decision to purchase, hopefully. Usually it's the parents that make the decision to purchase, especially with very young kids, obviously. And then in those cases, there might be a different way of how you communicate. But in typical cases, when the user is going to be usually the person that's purchasing the product, you have to talk to that person. And of course, you might have to talk about both aspects. You might have to talk about the usability aspect, but also the benefits of how it is being purchased. So let's move on to the next one. What is the next topic that we have here that is important, and there's a big difference? So the next one is the go-to-market strategy. How do they get the products to the customers? How they promote them? Where do they place them? And so on. In B2B, the products, it can be very different approaches. It will differ a lot between companies. Some companies are very heavy sales-led, meaning that you cannot even go and purchase the product in an e-commerce platform. You cannot just go to the website and purchase. You cannot do that. You have to talk with a salesperson to be able to purchase. This still happens in quite many software products. Another companies, Notion comes to mind, MirrorMask comes to mind. Those are companies that you can start purchasing in smaller for a smaller number of people. So for a team, and the price is affordable, that somebody that it doesn't have that cannot make very large purchases could actually go and purchase that for their own team. So that is a very common one for some of these B2B products, and it's also very common to have a hybrid approach nowadays. Notion, again, Miro, they had this approach. You can purchase the product for teams, but if you go for an enterprise tier, then you have to contact sales. Now, when it comes to B2C, of course, it's not always going to be product-led, but in many cases, it's going to be product-led. So think about, again, Netflix. You can go and subscribe on your own. You don't have to go and talk with a salesperson. Even many hardware or technology products nowadays are purchased directly by you. This means that they don't need to have very big sales teams in these companies to be able to sell the products. And that's something that, of course, e-commerce, internet has enabled and definitely has been expanding, and is still expanding more and more. Moving on to the next one, this is probably one of my favorite ones, is how companies, or how the different type of companies actually prioritize and actually move forward in the future with the future directions. How do they choose where they are going to be developing or not? So when it comes to B2B products, It is very typical, still nowadays, that development is happening because it's driven by customer requests and specific needs. Meaning that a big customer of yours comes and tells you that they would like to have something, and then you go and develop it. Or specific needs can be because our company or our product, for example, when I have been working in products related to construction, there are regulations that you have to comply with. So if you are checking like the quality of a design, and if there's a regulation, you want to check against that regulation. You could argue that, for example, Miro or Figma especially has to do something similar when it comes to accessibility. And it has to give you that feedback that, hey, there is a special need of making sure that your designs are complying and they are accessible by people that might have problems with identifying colors, let's say, for example. This is a very common thing, and there is a big problem with this. I think that I have videos about this. I will link them up there if I find them. But the reality is that although, yes, in many cases, especially if you are a startup and if you are in your early stages, you might be cash trapped and you really need to make sure that you get income. And then you will do some developments that maybe don't align with your vision. And I think that this is something that where these B2B companies can learn definitely from B2C, because I see that in B2C maybe happens less, is that you had to have a vision, you had to define a strategy, and you had to identify how different requests align with your strategy. If they align to your strategy, yes, you can prioritize, and then you can figure out how you are going to build it, and you can understand better if this is a good fit, and build it using product discovery, by the way. I'm not saying that you should just go and build because they told you. You have to understand what problem it is and try to find the most ideal solution. Then when it comes to B2C products, they are usually more driven by vision, by having a goal, a vision of what that product should be, and mass market appeal. That also can all take them in the wrong direction, by the way. Mass market appeal doesn't mean that it's necessarily aligning with your vision. And you have to be very critical when you take those steps that take you away from your vision. You had to really think about it. You had to make sure that what you're trying to do or what you're trying to build is not going against too much, at least, of what your vision is. Because that might be taking the focus away of what the product is. And this applies to both, getting into a situation where your product doesn't have a vision and anything goes because people are asking for it. That will lead you to problems in the future because you don't have a goal. Your product might be trying to do way too many things and then it's not serving anybody. And probably is not going to do those things very well. Just a word of caution. Moving on to the next topic. Services and support. So this is a very key part of having of B2B products, and maybe not something that you notice or that you have problems to find when you're in B2C products. I'm already telling what I'm going to present. But first of all, with B2B products, basically you have strong services typically, like support, documentation, customization, trainings, whatnot. You have a ton of services, usually what is called professional services in the company or customer success teams or whatnot, that are there to help the customer in their journey of adopting the product. You could argue if this is because of not having a great usability, and in some cases it will be. But of course, companies, when they adopt a B2B product, this is usually critical for the processes. If the product is not working, they need an answer, they need to send an email and get an answer or call or whatnot. And they have to get that reaction. Or especially if the service is down, then you need to be able to do that. As opposed to if in B2C products, the services are usually minimal. They're more focused on self-service and FAQs and online helps and these things. And I'm not against them. I think that they're great. I use them a lot. If you think about, I'm thinking about how to write something in SQL, let's say, I'm trying to do a query, I usually start by just Googling something and then, customizing it to my own needs, because I'm not very good at writing any type of SQL language. Then, so it can help a lot many of the situations. So I think that a balance between both of them is really good. So I think that here the B2B companies could learn from having more this self-service, so people can already find information on their own, and there are critical and there are moments where they just need an answer and they could find it right away. So they don't need to always contact somebody. And then there's the other way around, is that, well, if something happens with Netflix and Netflix is not working, you probably don't have anybody to call. Anyways, moving on to the next one. Here we have user experience, again, very tied to the previous one. The user experience when it comes to B2B products, functionality, I'm going to say is 90% of the time prioritized over design. Many B2B companies still don't have designers, or they have very few designers compared to the number of product managers that they have, or even compared to the numbers of R&D members they have. I see that in many cases, in B2B situations, there's many people in R&D. There's usually only a handful of product managers managing several teams, all of them. And then sometimes there's not even product designers, or there's just one or a few. And then they try to get by with that. And that's a problem. And I know that in some situations, the customers are trapped. There's not many other solutions, and all of them have bad usability or bad design. Then the products can get by. This can be a very big advantage for you if you are able to do this and make yourself different from the others. When it comes to user experience for the B2C products, design and user experience are key and very critical for them to succeed, because without them, they're probably going to lose the customers. They are going to churn, they're going to move away. So here, definitely, B2B companies could learn from B2C. Pricing model. Here, although it's getting more and more similar nowadays, it's not so different as it used to be. The pricing model is probably starting to be more common or more similar between the both of them, but what it's different is the contracts and negotiations that can happen. So usually you have to sign contracts. And yes, you could argue that in B2C you had to sign a contract. And you do. You probably don't even think about it. You just check a box and say accept. You're signing a contract there. But then in B2B, there's addendums that are created, there are amendments that are done to the contracts. There's a ton of information that the companies go through, where data is stored, what data is stored, what rights the selling company still has, like auditing, stuff like that. When it comes to B2C, obviously there are simple pricing. You don't want to do a sell to a person like me and that they had to go through a ton of documentation. The reality is that I'm pretty sure that 90% of the people or more never read the license agreement or the data protection documentation that they are agreeing to when they are purchasing Netflix, let's say. I'm pretty sure that most of the people never ever bother to read those ones. When it comes to these type of products, well, you have things like fixed fees, subscriptions, one-time purchases, pricing. Nowadays, as I said, maybe in B2C, B2B products, there's more the per seat, but per seat happens also a lot. In B2C products, so I would not say that there's big differences there. Finally, we have the sales cycle. Here's very different. The sales cycle for B2B products, it is very long. It's relationship based. You have to know the person. You have to talk many times physically with a person, at least by phone, email, have conversations, discussion of what is the value, how you're demoing the product, bringing people to demo the product, answering questions about potential directions of the product in the future, how your integrations is, demo how it integrates into the environment of the customer. It can take weeks and it can take months to do a sell. Sometimes it can take more than a year to do a sell in this type of businesses. Whereas when it comes to B2C, they focus more on short sales cycle and often very impulsive driven. You probably have done this. You subscribe to Netflix, the TV show that you like ends, you unsubscribe. Next season comes, you subscribe again, then you unsubscribe, and so on. Very common thing that happens very typically with B2C products. So how can you take this information forward? So I would recommend you that if you are in a B2B product or if you are in a B2C product, you familiarize yourself with the ways of working or the other, because there are things that you can learn. To be frank, to be honest, and this is me coming from B2B products more than B2C, the products that I work with, the closest that I had to B2C is this channel as experience. And B2B products really could learn a lot from B2C. Yeah, there are many things that are done maybe in a more modern way in B2C and more in a user-centric way. There are things that are not done very well in B2C products, and definitely don't copy those ones. But I would say that there are things where I think that you could focus and you could see how you can bring more value to your customers. In the end, bringing more value to your customers in B2B is going to end up impacting the business because you are going to be able to sell more, which is what your business is going to go after. But understanding maybe product-led, that's going to be something that is going to help you potentially start building organically in the organization and maybe preventing these very long sales cycles. A very important one for me as well is that, yes, there might be customer requests, completely fine. There might be specific needs that you have to take into account, like regulations. It's great. Understanding of having a vision, having a strategy, being able to focus, being able to make sure that what you're building is going in that direction is going to help you a lot. B2C can learn as well from this. Many companies and many products don't necessarily really have that vision, and maybe you can see that they just went to a certain point, they became somehow successful, at least they are known and purchased, but then they don't have a vision, they don't have a goal where they're going to move in the future. And that can mean that it might be difficult for them to grow and prioritize and understand what you're going to be implemented in the product in the future. Services, I think that both could learn from each other here. I think that both are very focused on their way of doing it. And here, I think that a hybrid could help a lot for both the type of products. And definitely user experience, I think that here is B2C probably is the one that has been the most advanced or the most modern. And B2B definitely could take many practices from there, because time to learn a new feature, not overcomplicating the product, time to get value out of the product, time to get adopted the product. There's many things that could be improved in many B2B products. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel. YouTube is really good at recommending videos, so go check out this one because probably it's interesting for you. I will see you in the next one, and remember, stay safe.